Hello everybody. Today we're going to be testing some breakers. I don't know how this is going to turn out, but we've got a Federal Pacific Stab-Lok panel here. You know, everyone knows and loves the Federal Pacific Stab-Lok panel. I actually have a few of them. And we're going to be testing some breakers. We're going to start off with this 15 amp breaker. And here's our setup. So we've got a receptacle wired to that, going to here. This is all 12 gauge. Might even actually be 10 gauge. Anyway, power coming in to this breaker. I've just got the two phases, or I should say each half of the phase, split phase, tied together. We're not going to be doing any 240 volt stuff. I've got a space heater, and I've 1,320 watts, whatever, and a 1,500 watt heat gun there. Got an amp meter, and I am going to put the camera on the tripod so that all of my tripod spammers can get out of the way. Since everyone wants me to pull out the tripod, let's do it here. Let's not edit any of this out, so that the people complaining about the tripod, you know, oh, you need to use a tripod. Let's make the experience worse for everyone. Anyway, I just realized I didn't bring a timer down here, or my phone, or any way to time this, which I should probably go grab real quick, since that might actually be a helpful bit of knowledge. So I'm going to go do that, and I'll be right back. Now the objective here is to not trip the 40 amp breaker feeding this whole thing, or the 30 amp fuse in the panel here, although we might. Anyway, amp meter is here. It has turned off, but we will turn it right back on. This main is doing nothing. I don't have anything hooked up to there. I've got the power coming in hooked up to this 100 amp breaker. Anyway, let's see, there's got to be a stopwatch on this thing, right? Here we go. Alright, so let's turn on the main and turn the breaker on. Okay, space heater. Alright, we're pulling 23 amps. This is a 15 amp breaker. How do I zoom this? Oh, I gotta take it out of here to zoom. Okay. That was 50 seconds. Alright. Now what I'm going to do is, that's weird. It tripped, but it, let's turn that off so the bus bar is not live. Now I'm reaching around the tripod. God, it's already hot enough in here. I don't need this damn space heater. Fucking Stab-Lok. Alright, I'm going to move this down to here just so we can see it better. There we go. Let's do that again, since apparently it worked. Mind you, let me remind you, I am not vouching for Federal Pacific. There's plenty of evidence that they cause problems. But I think the 80% failure rate might be a little bit of a high estimate. I mean, I've been dealing with one in all my life feeding my house, and I've been having, I mean, the breaker's been tripping ever since I was like, you know, 5 or 6 years old, just because I have so much stuff in the one room, that breaker is always tripping. Always. It's a nuisance. And I have replaced the breaker because it actually got to the point where it was tripping too early. And I replaced it with another one. And while it doesn't necessarily trip early like the other one did, it still trips. So, I don't know. Alright, where'd my, reset that, 52 seconds last time. Alright. I realize you cannot see that. I don't know what a reasonable time is. I know there's this is not very scientific. The way they test it is 135% has to trip at a certain amount of time, and 200% has to trip at a certain amount of time. I don't know how much time that is, but I feel that 50 seconds was probably reasonable, right? It's a 20 amp breaker. Oh, there it went again. 39 seconds. All right. Now the other thing they say, this is just weird. All right. It trips in the off position. I don't think that's normal, but whatever. The other thing they say is, oh, well, it might trip once and then never trip again. So we'll do this one a few times before. All right. Yep. Oh. Oh, there we go. Got it all hot and bothered now. It doesn't want to turn back on. That is normal, by the way. I mean, I would think if it were going to jam, it would do it. And this is one of the bad ones they tell you to look out for. This is not a replacement, or I should say replacement. This is not a new. I should note that this is not warm. It's fine. Breaker's a bit warm. That's to be expected. The bimetallic strip in there is doing what it should do and heating up. This is not one of the aftermarket Connecticut electric breakers. This is, I don't know if you can see that, FPE, Federal Pacific Electric Company, Stab-Lok breaker with the red handle. The one they say is the bad one. Alright, let's try another one. Actually, for the hell of it, why does this breaker have two? This is a square D breaker. Let's just test a square D breaker with the same load and see how long that takes to trip, out of curiosity, because I don't know what is normal. I would assume a square D breaker, oh, where'd my good screwdriver go that I was just holding a second ago? I would assume a square D breaker will do what it should do. If you're familiar with the YouTube channel, B Bishop PCM's World, this particular breaker came out of his house. Anyway, if you're unfamiliar with him, go watch him. He makes good content. All right. So this is a square D breaker. Let's just kind of try to jam that on there. I don't have a square D panel. I got a bunch of shitty Federal Pacific panels. I don't have a square D panel. Can we just? All right, I'll just hold it there. We'll start the timer. Hold on. All right, this is on. This is on. Do not try this at home. Really? I was expecting it to be quicker. What are we at? 22.3. 22. There it went. Alright, 56 seconds. So, almost exactly the same, I would say, as the Federal Pacific breaker. So, ow, god damn. That was not making a good connection. That is hot. But I guess that's to be expected when you're just kind of pressing it up against the bus bar. Yeah, there you go. That was a square D 15 amp breaker. So it performed exactly the same. Let's try another Federal Pacific breaker. This is the one we just did. This is a different one. So let's try this one. I'm also going to try a couple of these Stab-Lok thin breakers, because I've heard those are a bit more problematic as far as making connection with the bus bar goes. I don't know about tripping properly. But anyway, this is a different one. Let's hold that up there. Turn both of these off. Get the timer ready. It's not timer, it's a stopwatch. Panel's hot. Load is hot. Heat gun was melting something in the background. Alright, we're 58, 59, a minute. Not tripping. I would love to know what and how, I should say, they did the falsified UL testing on these. Supposedly they somehow had a manual trip device to manually trip them if they weren't tripping. Oh! Okay, well that was a minute and 30 seconds. Once again, I have no idea. I suppose I should have looked it up before. What something reasonable is. I mean, well, this is 10 gauge. That wouldn't tell us anything. I don't think that there would be any risk of anything heating up or starting on fire, you know, if it were under like 10 minutes or anything. Which obviously we're way under that. To know what they supposedly had, some sort of remote tripper thing to trip these somehow if they weren't tripping properly for the UL testing when they were falsifying it. I would love to know. That was 44 seconds. Do that one more time. This one seems to be a little bit less responsive, but it's still tripping. Yeah, I would have loved to know what that is. 32 seconds. Alright. Let's move on to a 20 amp breaker. Let me do a little bit of calculation here. So 20 times okay, so a 20 amp breaker may not trip at 22 amps, will it? Yeah, 135% of 20 is 27. So, I don't know. Let's see if this one's an overachiever. Does better than the code says. Cut this guy off. Pull this guy out. And we'll pop in a 20 amp Stab-Lok breaker and see what she does. I will be very surprised if this trips. If it doesn't, we might try to add another load to it. Problem is, this whole building is on a, well, I keep saying it's on a 40 amp circuit, but we're limited to about 30 amps before we blow a fuse. So, let's just give this a whirl. Panel's hot. Let me get the timer. That's the other 15 we tested. I've got another 20 if that one does that too. I'm going to get a couple more 15s. I'm also going to grab a Connecticut electric breaker and maybe even American Circuit Breaker Corp breaker on. Alright. So I'm going to go over here with a screwdriver and open up one of these other panels so I can grab some more breakers here. Ideally, we're going to keep going until we find a failure. I was really expecting to find a failure by now, because 80% is the supposed failure rate of these things. Breaking shit. No, don't bend. Ooh, do I only have 20 amp thin breakers? We're at a minute 32. And no tripping. But once again, it's not 135% of the load, so technically it doesn't have to. Let's put some more load on it then. to get me a thingy-majiggy. At this point, the timing has kind of gone out the window. Where is my splitter? Where did I put it? God damn it. I have a, you know, very high quality, high current rated, here it is. Here we go. Rated for maximum current here. We'll just go ahead, since it is getting kind of hot in here, and plug in an air conditioner. Well, that was more of a short circuit test because the compressor stalled out on the air conditioner. But it tripped. Alright, now the question is, do the lights in here go out before that thing trips? Of course, 31.9 is not 35% or whatever. Oh, there it went. Okay. Now the compressor's stalled out, it's gonna trip instantaneously. Alright. We'll give that a minute to cool down, in case the breaker feeding this whole building decides it wants to, well, I should say the fuse decides it wants to blow. The breaker's not going to. It's also a Stab-Lok breaker, so if the lights in here go out and the breaker has tripped, well, whatever. Okay, where the hell did my... Here it is. Alright, so this can go in the pile of ones that did not fail to trip multiple times. Which is growing. I was hoping I would get a failure by now, but I guess not. Alright. Let's try a thin breaker. Type NC. So this camera has a limit to how long you can record for. It's like 25 minutes or something. Anyway, this is a thin Stab-Lok breaker. This is a thick Stab-Lok breaker. Type NA, type NC. A type NA will fit in the place of one, or I should say type NA will fit in one Stab-Lok thing. Whereas an NC, you can fit two in the same spot. Later, Federal Pacific panels actually removed the ability to do this because supposedly these cause more problems. So, let's go ahead and try that. First thing I'm noticing is my screwdriver doesn't fit in this one. Not off to a good start here. But with the help of an even older wooden screwdriver, this fits. My wires are starting to fan out on me. Alright. So, same test. That in there. That is just that is how it sits in there. You're really supposed to use two of those. You're not just supposed to put one, but whatever. Oh yeah, that goes in the good pile. Well, there's no good pile, but the pile of ones that have not failed yet. I guess we gotta turn that on first. Screw the timer. Focus, please. Pulling 31 amps. Would you focus? The hell? Okay. Let's see if it trips instantaneously when that air conditioner's turned on. Pretty much. Let me unplug the other two loads, turn the air conditioner off, turn this on, and turn it on with the compressor stalled. And yeah, I'd say that was pretty reasonable. I'd say that that is working as intended. I'd like the compressor on the air conditioner to actually start if it could, so that I can have a standard, you know, like a reasonable, there it goes. Okay. Got it all hot and bothered now. It is, I don't know how well you can see, internally arcing. Oh wow, it's really dark in here now, I can't see. If I turn that on, I don't know if you could see that. There was a spark flew out of it. Although, I don't know if that's unreasonable or not. Probably not. So, turn off. Oh, that one. Oh yeah, that's already off. What am I doing? Okay. Let's test a aftermarket, or I shouldn't say aftermarket, but a when Federal Pacific got bought out, or I should say when they went under, they got absorbed into a few different companies, and a few different companies started making their stuff. One of them was the American Breaker Corporation. Another one that they still makes them to this day, and those are supposedly, these are actually pretty well regarded as far as Stab-Lok goes, are these Connecticut electric breakers, but I don't have any of these to test except for this 30, which obviously if we're loading a 30 amp down enough to trip it, then it's just going to cut the whole building off, so can't really do that. But what I can test is one of these American breakers. Now, the one time I have seen a Federal Pacific panel actually not trip was one of these American breakers at a friend's house, working on an old space heater. Something happened anyway that ended up being a dead short. And I don't know how long it would have taken that breaker to trip, but it was like a solid 2 or 3 seconds before I manually unplugged it. And I mean, it browned out the whole house. And that was one of these. So, let's see. This is a 15 amp breaker. So, we're gonna... Really? tripped. Alright, let me use the air conditioner to simulate as we did before. I don't know how much current that pulls, but it's quite a bit. Let me unplug the other two loads and just leave the air conditioner plugged in and see if we can get a measurement on that. Oh, is the compressor not gonna... Oh, there it went. So it overloads the meter, and the rating of that is what, 40 amps? Oh geez. Okay, let's go to 400. Now it's running normally. 46. Alright, so 46 amps. Trips almost instantly, which at 46 amps, yeah, that's pretty good. You would want to see that. 60 amps. Just for shits and giggles, let's no, we better not. I don't want to kill the power down here quite yet. When we're done, I'll test a 30 amp breaker and just run 60 amps through it and see if it trips, or if the 30 amp feed coming to here trips first. I'm going with that one. Let me try to get this more focused. Alright, it's focused. So the American breaker, that is off, right? Yeah. The American breaker, why don't I just remove this first? The American breaker, how many times can I say the American breaker? This is the American breaker. It did what it was supposed to do. Let's test another 20 amp thin breaker. I can't keep doing this like 100 times. I was expecting a failure by now, but I'm just not seeing it. Where's the smaller screwdriver? Here it is. I was expecting one to not trip. You know, one of these breakers that has a solid 80% failure rate. I would expect by now, what do we do? We've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We've done 6. So this many of them, I mean, I've done really good, because I've gotten all the 20% that aren't bad right now. Alright, 34 amps going through a 20 amp breaker. Should trip in a matter of seconds or minutes. Every single one has. I don't know, man. I don't have any Challenger breakers, and I don't have any smaller Connecticut electric breakers. I would assume those would be about the same. Another different variant here we can test. Tripped. Okay. Turn the air conditioner off. So we can turn that on. Excellent. Very good. And by very good, I mean we haven't seen a failure yet, and I was hoping to. I've got another variant of Federal Pacific breaker here. And that is one without the red. Now you see Federal Pacific in its time went through several different companies owning it. Of course, most of them are going to be this red type. These are made by Federal Pacific Electric Company, Newark, New Jersey. However, afterwards, a company called Reliance Electric bought them in, I think it was 1979, and continued to make them through the 80s. And they continued to get sold and installed, especially surplus panels, through the 90s. Here is a later one. I know you can't see this, but it says Federal Pacific, Reliance Electric, Raleigh, North Carolina. So this is like the last generation of Federal Pacific that was still Federal Pacific before they were being made by other companies. It's the exact same thing basically, but might as well test one. Other thin breaker obviously was fine. So here we go. I will say, this one, like, this seems to be a lot easier to, it doesn't really click as much. Like, listen. Hear the click when I turn it on? It's got a lot more resistance than that. This is obviously a 20 amp breaker. This air conditioner doesn't work so great. I guess when you got two space heaters fighting against it, it's only going to get hotter. There it went. Cool. Alright. Let's turn the air conditioner off. Turn that on. Then turn the air conditioner on. Yeah, almost instantly. I suppose I should start doing that test first. Well, it doesn't... Either way, it skews the results because the breaker gets warm. And then it trips quicker. It's tripping just fine. Alright. Well, we've got 3 more breakers to test. Alright, what have we done here? We've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Wait, no, I counted only one thin one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We've done 8. And so far, all of them have done what they're supposed to do perfectly. I mean, statistically, all 8 of these should be bad, but they're not. I'm sure there are some specific conditions that you can test these under to make them fail more likely, like maybe a couple thousand amps short-circuited directly across them, but that is so much less common than a standard overload because, you know, hairy homeowner plugged in too many space heaters. Anyway, 15 amp breaker. Let me do the air conditioner now. And yeah, that was pretty good. Pretty decent. That was 60 amps. But yeah, that was pretty good. Uh-oh. Give it a minute to cool down. I guess we got it all hot and bothered again. Okay. Nine. I must be the luckiest son of a bitch in the world to have all these good Federal Pacific breakers that time and time again are working properly. Oh boy. You're not making a very exciting video. Please don't use this as trying to provide it as proof that these things are safe. I am not saying that they are good in any way. I am almost shocked here. Of course, the camera battery dies right as I'm finishing the last one. Hopefully it didn't, it actually recorded that. It recorded the 9th one working fine. So we'll move on to the 10th one. That was the 10th one. Well, I suppose we'll count again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That was 10. So 8 of those should have failed to trip. Alright, here's our last one. After this, for shits and giggles, we'll try this Connecticut Electric 30 amp breaker with the air conditioner on stall. But I suspect it's going to be fine, or I suspect we will knock the lights in the building out before that trips. I mean, because A, Federal Pacific, but also B, fuses tripped faster than light or breakers. Alright. Nothing. There we go. Also a 15. I feel like that one did it pretty quickly. Oh shit. Alright, let's try the 30 amp breaker for shits and giggles and see what we can do here. Since every single one of these, 10 plus 1, so we have room for marginal, whatever the hell you call it. Anyway, this is one of the gray Connecticut electric breakers. This is the only one of these I have. But these are supposedly so much better. So, don't blame it though if it doesn't trip before the lights in here go out. This is a dual pole breaker, but a dual pole breaker should trip even if it's just a single, you know what I mean. Was not expecting that. The damn air conditioner overload kicked out. Which I suppose is pretty nice on the compressor, but kind of ruins what we're trying to do here. Well, for shits and giggles, I suppose I'll go grab another space heater. Alright, I grabbed another space heater here. I fully expect the lights in this shed to go out way before the breaker ever trips. Simply because it's fused. At this point, I think this would trip if I gave it the provisions to do so. Really only 32 amps, 3 space heaters, I guess that makes sense. Let me plug the, put 30 amps through that. Yeah, I might as well. If I didn't show you this, yeah, that's what we're running that through. Do not do this at home. Okay. I am going to, just to give it the best chance we can, turn off all these fluorescent lights after I find my phone for a flashlight. Okay, we're drawing 42 amps. 40 amps. Something burning. Oh, it's that space heater. Alright, we'll ignore that. $40 amps, I bet you are... Oh, that's number 12. Okay. I'm more concerned that the 30 amp fuse hasn't blown, really. Something's getting hot. Something is getting really toasty. Oh shit. Okay. I'm calling it. Something is burning my actual panel over here. The, wow. Yeah, that 30 amp fuse did not blow, but the terminals going into it are hot. What the hell, man? 60 amps? Are you still not going to trip? Is the fuse not going to blow? What the hell? No, you're not. Well, damn. I won't even blame Federal Pacific for that one. It might have tripped, but there is a strong odor of something burning. This number 12 Romex going into here is just, it is very hot. So we're gonna stop while we're ahead. I'm gonna call this one a forfeit, and all the other ones a success. I can get it to come out. There we go. This one we're calling a forfeit. All the other ones we're calling a success. Unfortunately, we didn't see any failures. All of those worked just as they should. So, who knows? Anyway, this was not, once again, meant to be used as any sort of actual scientific testing and or, you know, genuine statistics. I am not saying these things are safe. I still will stand by that. Just because there is so much out there telling you that they're not, I don't think that everyone would be, you know, cumulatively lying to you. I just don't see what anyone would win by doing that. But I do believe that that 80% failure rate is quite a bit overblown. If you have one, you're probably fine. So, God, these things are annoying. They've been annoying to remove, the bigger ones. These 100 amp ones actually have 4 stabs on them. Anyway, there you go. Do with this information as you wish. I do believe that that was a fun little experiment, though. Let's just... Ow! Damn! This high current... Oh, man. my super high current rated thing just kind of melted. I would imagine that is what I was smelling. Anyway, yeah, once again, do with this information as you wish. But that was a fun little test. It definitely did not go the way I was expecting it to go. I was expecting to knock the lights out to this whole building a couple times because these breakers were not tripping. None of the bus bars are warm either. So they're all making a pretty good connection in there. So, yeah, this is not how I was expecting this to go. But anyway, once again, hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.